What's going on, guys? Khalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be going over some of the strengths and weaknesses of the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot. That being said, let's get into the video. So my first pro for this phone is the storage. This phone has 256 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion. And for a phone in this price range, that's pretty much unheard of. With 256 gigabytes, whether you're an average user or a power user who has all kinds of apps and photos and videos and pretty much anything, you're really unlikely to have to worry about storage on this phone. Usually phones in this price range cap out around 128 gigabytes, and that's still pretty impressive for a phone around this price range. 256 gigabytes is the type of storage you would expect to find in a high-end flagship phone like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra or maybe the iPhone 12 Pro Max, something like that that's really way at the top, not in a mid-level phone like this. So having this much storage in addition to micro SD card expansion is super impressive. Now keep in mind, that is specifically the variant of this phone you get straight through Motorola that is unlocked. Sometimes when you get a phone through a carrier instead, they do cut the storage and the RAM a little bit, so it might be different if you get it that way. But for the purpose of this video, this specific phone in my hand is the unlocked variant of the phone that you get straight through Motorola, so keep that in mind. My next pro for this phone is the battery. This phone has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery that supports 10 watt fast charging. So that's a huge battery. You're gonna get a ton of battery life throughout the day. You're probably not gonna have to charge it during the daytime, no matter how much you use it. So if you have a more mobile lifestyle where you have to use your phone heavily throughout the day, but don't get a ton of time to charge it, this is gonna help out a lot. And in addition to that, the fast charging allows you to charge the phone a lot more in a shorter period of time, so it helps out even more with that kind of lifestyle. Not only are you going to get a ton of life throughout the day, but down the road with a large battery like this, you're not going to notice it degrading as fast as you would with a smaller battery. So if you like to get the same phone and keep it for a longer period of time without replacing it, having a large battery like this is going to be another big advantage. My third pro for this phone is the display. This phone has a 6.8 inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 386, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen to body ratio of 85%. So that's a really nice display. Right now, I have the brightness at 100% and it looks really good. With the 1080p resolution, not only are things like videos and games and all that gonna look better on the phone, but also viewing pictures too and stuff where you really wanna see the fine details, that's all gonna look better on this display. And in addition to that, having a larger display enhances that effect as well. So the combination of a high resolution and a big screen really is going to help out if you're doing content consumption. Even with reading and stuff like that, where the graphics per se don't really matter, having the larger display is going to really make a difference because you'll be able to see the words and that sort of thing a lot better. And while this display is really big, you don't really see the drawbacks of having a large phone because the design of the device itself is really slim and you don't really notice it in your pocket too much or holding in your hand. It's all pretty comfortable. My fourth pro for this phone is the software. This phone has Android 11. Now keep in mind, although it is Android 11, it is Motorola's skin, so you're not going to get the edge panels or anything like that. But still, having Android 11 on this phone is really good because previous Motorola phones, like the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021, the 4G counterpart to this phone that came out earlier this year, I believe that phone has Android 10. And these days, we're getting real close to Android 12, so having Android 11 on this phone instead of Android 10 is really nice. My fifth pro for this phone is the camera. This phone has a 16 megapixel front-facing camera right up front, And we got the hole punch design, which I think looks really nice. The phone already has a nice modern look with thin bezels and the gesture navigation. So having that clean look of the hole punch front facing camera instead of a notch or something like that really makes a difference and adds to the look and character of the phone even more. On the back here, we got a 48 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So this phone has pretty much every camera feature you could ask for, and the quality of the photos taken by these cameras is really good. So whether you're more of an average user who doesn't use the camera too much, maybe a couple nice pictures here and there but nothing too special, or you're a more frequent user of the camera who likes to take really high quality photos and use more advanced features like an ultra wide camera, this phone's camera is going to be appealing to you either way. My first con for this phone is actually also sort of related to the camera, and that is the video quality. This phone has a max video quality in both the rear and the front cameras of 1080p, and I think that's a little disappointing considering the storage of this phone. 4K files are huge, and having a ton of storage like this phone does would just make sense with 4K capability, but this phone can't shoot 4K videos. And what makes even less sense to me is that the previous version of this phone, the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021, that's only the 4G model, actually does have the ability to shoot 4K videos, and it has half the storage of this phone, and it's the 4G version. Typically the 5G model of any phone usually has a few nicer perks, like at least a little bit more processing power, maybe a better camera, better display, something like that. Sometimes not all of it, because granted, manufacturers sometimes do have to take away certain features to cut cost in order to provide 5G at a decent price. That does make sense, I do understand that, but taking away 4K capability while adding a bunch more storage doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, and it's a little disappointing considering how good the rest of this phone's camera setup is. My second con for this phone is that it doesn't have NFC. NFC is becoming more and more widely used. Pretty much everybody at least has used Google Pay once or twice in their life. Maybe Apple Pay if you have an iPhone. Whatever the payment service is, contactless payment services are really convenient to use and they're really popular. So I'm not sure why, with a 5G phone in 2021, Motorola didn't incorporate NFC into this phone. My third con for this phone is the processor. Now the processor isn't bad. We're getting 6 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 5G processor. It's not horrible, but I do think it could be a lot better. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 494 and a multi-core score of 1336. And although the 6 gigabytes of RAM is nice, these numbers for a 5G phone in this price range are a little disappointing. I've seen plenty of phones in this price range that aren't even 5G phones with better scores than this. Now that being said, this phone is probably going to be able to do pretty much anything you want it to on a day-to-day basis, unless you're doing really high performance gaming or maybe video editing with large files. It should be able to do pretty much everything, but you're not going to get super fast speeds when you're browsing the web or social media that you would with a higher end phone or a flagship phone or anything like that. It's not even going to be close to that level. This is really very mid-range as far as processing power goes. I don't remember the exact figure off the top of my head, but I do believe the Motorola Moto G Power 2021 has a similar score to this. And in comparison, this is supposed to be one of Motorola's better phones. So I would think that the processing power would be at least a little bit higher than this. My fourth con for this phone is there's no wireless charging. Now this is a little nitpicky because, to be perfectly honest, this is such a good phone and I don't really see a whole lot wrong with it for its price range. But that being said, wireless charging just seems to be such a simple feature, and I don't know why more manufacturers haven't added this feature to their mid-range phones, because it would be real nice to be able to take advantage of it. There are lots of phone stands and things like that you can put in your car that mount the phone to the dash and double as a wireless charger, and being able to use that feature without having a $1,000 flagship phone would be real cool. I'm really hoping that in the future years, maybe even in 2022, manufacturers like Motorola do start to incorporate wireless charging into their devices, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. My fifth and final con for this phone is the materials. Now, don't get me wrong, the device looks really nice, and this doesn't exactly feel like a cheap phone, but it would be nice to see some higher quality glass on the screen and maybe some metal around the sides or something like that, just to make the phone feel a little bit more premium. But those were my pros and cons for the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G. At the end of the day, I do think, despite a few shortcomings, that this phone is actually a really nice phone that provides you with a lot of good benefits and is definitely a device worth considering. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.